What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, I'm going to talk about the Washington Wizards. Take a look at their roster and think about how good they might be in the Eastern Conference. This is a team that's interesting to me because recently I've been thinking more and more about this roster and the depth that they have, especially after, making the Russell Westbrook trade. They've kind of shaken things up this offseason and really flipped this team in a different direction. I don't know if they'll be better than last year. They might be a little bit better, might be a little bit worse. I don't really know. The Eastern Conference has kind of changed a lot just over the past couple of months, and so there's a lot of other teams that have improved and some that have gotten worse. So the Wizards, I think, are one that is honestly kind of a dark horse in the conference. A lot of people are sort of, assuming that they might be the same or a little bit worse than last year, given that they did get rid of Russell Westbrook, who, most people do view him as a positive player, right? And so flipping him for pretty much for depth pieces is kind of an interesting scenario where you're getting rid of an all-star level player in exchange for a bunch of guys who aren't quite on that level but might help you out in other ways. And then as well, they pulled off a sign and trade for Spencer Dinwiddie, bringing him onto the team. He's coming off an injury. So this is an interesting roster around Bradley Beal, and we're going to see how good they're going to be. So I just kind of wanted to talk about this rotation, how things might shake out for them, and how good I expect them to be next year. So here's the roster on paper. Obviously, this is subject to change. We expect that there will be maybe a couple cuts and maybe a trade or two before the season does tip off. But this is what they have on paper right now. And just looking at this, there's around 13 to 14 players here that you would expect getting, to get rotation minutes in the NBA. And that is a good problem to have, right? Because they just have a lot of depth here. Now, none of them are like superstar level aside from Bradley Beal, of course, but they have a lot of really solid NBA rotation talent, and not all those guys are going to play every night. It is the backside of that, right? Are they going to be able to convince some of these guys to take a role as a bench warmer, as the 13th, 14th man who you're not going to play most nights? You're there in case of injury insurance, but for the most part, there's going to be a couple of guys on here who probably deserve to play NBA minutes that just aren't going to find that opportunity on the Wizards. So maybe they need to make a trade or something to cut things down. But let's just go through this. Let's go through all these players that are expecting to probably play. Spencer Dinwiddie, Aaron Holiday, KCP, Bradley Beal, Neto, Avdia, Corey Kispert, Davis Bertans, Kuzma, Gafford, Isaiah Todd. Maybe he's a rookie. If he's good right away, he might play. Hachimura, Montrezl Harrell, and Thomas Bryant. So if you count all those guys, that's 14 players. That's almost your entire roster of guys who probably should be playing at least a little bit, right? And you can maybe throw even some of these other guys in there. I know Anthony Gill played a little bit for them last year. Jay Huff I liked in Summer League. I don't know if he'll make the roster. Cassius Winston on a two-way. Maybe he can earn himself some playing time. So, that's a lot of guys, is my point. Is they have a lot of players that probably should be playing, and they're just not going to have enough minutes to go around for all these guys. So what are they going to do with that? How is this rotation going to shake out? I think, to me, that's one of the most fascinating things to watch out for over the first, couple of weeks of the season throughout the NBA is what is this Wizards rotation going to be? Who's going to end up playing? Who's going to be on the trade block for them? And what kind of moves are they going to make? Because they've got a lot of guys on here, a lot of them younger talent that should be getting some developmental minutes, and a lot of these guys are veterans, These guys that they just picked up from the Lakers, like KCP and Kyle Kuzma, both have championship pedigree, so they've earned themselves minutes in the rotation and stuff. And Montrezl Harrell was a sixth man of the year a couple years ago, of course. So you've got all these guys who are going to be expected to play, and they're just not going to have minutes for all of them. So that's something to watch, definitely. So let's also talk about a potential starting lineup. You would expect Spencer Dinwiddie to slot into that point guard position, replacing Russell Westbrook from last year. So him, of course, Bradley Beal is going to start. And then beyond that, things get a little bit murky in terms of a small forward. Denny Avdia started, most of the games that he played in last year when he was healthy, but he came off the bench for some. Maybe going into his second season, he's improved enough to be the full-time starting three. Or Corey Kispert, I guess, could start as a rookie. They did run some three-guard lineups with Neto in the starting lineup next to Westbrook and Beal last year. So Neto, I think, can slide in there and potentially start. Kuzma, I think, is also an option at the 3 or the 4. Hachimura is pretty entrenched as the starting power forward because he did start all of the games. Every game that he played in last year, he started. So he was the mostly the starting power forward for them last year. But maybe Kuzma comes in and kind of bumps his minutes a little bit. I don't know, depending on what they want to do. with Kispert, Bertans, Avdia, how they want to split those minutes up. Interesting, thing there on the wing. And then at center, they lost Alex Lynn to free agency, and so it's, Thomas Bryant should be the guy when he's healthy, but he's not healthy right now. He's going to miss the start of the year, still coming back from that ACL. So when he does come back, maybe he's the starter, or maybe he moves into a bench role, and you're letting Montrezl Harrell be the starter, even though, he was at his most productive when he was a sixth man. Of course, he won the Sixth Man of the Year award when he was with the Clippers, so maybe you'd rather just bring him off the bench anyway. I think Daniel Gafford, he might be a little bit undersized, but he's an option there at center as well. And he was really, really good for them to close out the year last season. So I think those are your options. But it's interesting to talk about a potential starting lineup here, because I think they have a lot of decisions to make. And you could go in multiple different directions here. And you also got to take into account, egos of players and trying to make sure everybody's happy and getting the minutes that they want. And so it's going to be a balancing act for sure. So if your starting lineup is Dinwiddie, Bradley Beal, let's say Avdia at the 3, Hachimura at the 4, and then probably I would go with Gafford, honestly, at the 5, and then maybe phase in Thomas Bryant when he's healthy. We'll keep Harrell off the bench. Then off the bench as your backups, you have probably KCP would be one of the first guys in, Kuzma, Bertans would all come in with the second unit, probably Neto would come in as a point guard, and then you'd probably run in Montrezl Harrell as the 5. But even then, past that, you're trying to find minutes for a guy like Corey Kispert as a rookie, trying to get him some minutes in the NBA scene. Aaron Holiday, as a good defensive guard guy who can do a little bit for you. I think he probably deserves some minutes, but he might be the guy that I would bump out of the rotation immediately. Isaiah Todd, like I said, another rookie who probably deserves NBA rotation minutes. It just gets really, really murky after you take into account who really needs to play. Because like I said, you have that starting lineup, and particularly off the bench, I think, obviously you're paying Bertans a lot of money, so he has to play, and his shooting is valuable. Kuzma has the championship pedigree. KCP has the championship pedigree. Both of them need to be playing. Montrezl Harrell as well, I think, deserves minutes unless you can trade him somehow. So really all those guys are like must plays off the bench, and then whoever the other center is, right, whether it's Gafford or Bryant, or whoever, right, Montrezl Harrell, also throw him in there. So all those guys need to play, and so you get to a point where it's a logjam, and you don't have minutes for all these guys. And I guess we'll just have to see, may the best man win, right? Whatever the rotation shakes out to be. The new coach, Wes Unseld Jr., he's going to have a heck of a time trying to figure out who he wants to give his minutes to, because it's definitely going to be a tall task. And so let's say they do make a trade, right? Say whether that's prior to the season beginning or a little ways in or leading all the way up to the trade deadline, right? They figure out, hey, who do we want having this rotation, especially by the time the trade deadline rolls around? They should have a solid rotation by then, right? So they know who they can potentially trade. And there's a lot of players on this team that are going to be valuable to contenders, especially if they're not in the rotation and they're unhappy. I think it would be mutually beneficial for both the player and the team to work out a potential move. So whoever ends up falling out of the rotation, I would expect to probably have a trade worked out at some point, between the start of the regular season and the deadline, to get one or multiple of these players to a team where they can actually play. So who's going to be out there to potentially be snatched up by another team? I think Aaron Holiday is a prime candidate for that. Like I said, I like what he provides, and he was a relatively high draft pick a couple of years ago. I thought he had some good underrated years on the Pacers, and I think that he could be a guy that is not super expensive right now. A team can kind of swoop in and grab him for probably not much value. So Aaron Holiday is a guy that I would watch to potentially be traded at some point. KCP's contract, I don't expect him to fall out of the rotation, but I think he's definitely movable if they feel like they can part with him. Neto's on the minimum. If he doesn't find himself playing, he could potentially be valuable to another team. I don't think they're going to trade Avdia, Kispert, or Hachimura. We'll jump down to him. Young guys on rookie contracts, I expect they'll keep them around. Bertans is a guy who's really expensive. The contract is, kind of bad in the eyes of a lot of people. And with like 4 years left on it, it's going to be hard to move that. So I doubt we'll see a trade for Bertans. Kuzma could potentially be a guy who gets moved at the deadline. We'll have to see how things shake out for him. Gafford's a young guy. I'd hold on to him. Isaiah Todd's still a rookie, of course. Harrell, I think, is also a prime candidate for a trade, given that he's only on, the 1 year contract. It's expiring. Maybe he doesn't fit with what the Wizards are trying to do We'll have to see how he plays. Didn't really work out for him with the Lakers last season, so we'll have to see, you know, if he ends up playing better here with Washington. But if things aren't going well for him, I could definitely foresee a trade for Montrezl Harrell, given that we've seen him play well in the past, even if he's been inconsistent at points. And he does have a 6 Man of the Year award and stuff, and it's a 1-year contract, so you're not risking too much by trading for him. Thomas Bryant, if he's not good after the injury, could maybe also be a trade guy, depending on which center emerges as their go-to option. So I think out of everybody on this roster, Aaron Holiday and Montrezl Harrell are the two that I think could potentially find themselves lower in the rotation than they'd like to be, and maybe get snatched up by another team at some point. But even then, you know, if you're taking those two out of it, it's still a lot of players, and they're going to have to figure something out. As far as how good I think they'll be, I think this team is actually underrated. I think they should be at least as good as they were last season, maybe potentially better. Spencer Dinwiddie is not Russell Westbrook. I don't want to say that he's better than Russell Westbrook, especially because we haven't seen him in a year, right? He's coming off an ACL tear and hasn't played in a while. Hopefully he's, you know, back to 100% when he's back healthy, but we just don't know at this point. And you know, when both are healthy, him and Russ, I think Russell Westbrook, you know, provides more for you, maybe from a playmaking perspective. He's definitely more athletic. He's not a shooter. We know the flaws of Russell Westbrook. I don't want to turn this into a Russell Westbrook soapbox thing, but I think Dinwiddie is, if he is worse than Westbrook, it's not by much. I think it's closer than a lot of people maybe realize. Dinwiddie's more of an under-the-radar guy, especially coming off of a year of injury. I do really like him for this Wizards team. I think he fits well. Him and Bradley Beal should be a really dynamic backcourt together. So I'm expecting big things out of him this year. And then, you know, they just got, you know, deeper in general across the board. That's been kind of the whole point of this video, is they have a lot of depth, maybe too much depth, but getting a guy like KCP, who, you know, had some great moments in the finals for the Lakers a couple of years ago, and is, you know, has that upside as a shooter, and can do some things for you off the dribble as well. I really like that addition for them. I think Kuzma in a different situation could potentially show more areas of his game, and he did improve defensively last season with the Lakers, so he adds a piece there. Corey Kispert as a potential, you know, high upside rookie, a guy who can come in right away and you know, provide some shooting and spacing for you. I think he could potentially have a decent sized role for them this year and provide that spacing. Bertans could maybe have a bounce back year, you know, play better than he did last season, and you know, show that shooting, and that why they signed him to that contract. Daniel Gafford could improve, Hachimura could improve, Avdia could improve, and you know, hopefully he stays healthy. So you see the point I'm trying to make, right? This is a team with a lot of options and a lot of upside, and I think they're a really deep roster, and Bradley Beal is going to have another good season. I fully expect it. And so I think they're going to be in the playoff race. Honestly, the East is really deep, and a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference did improve this past season, but I think the Wizards are one that we could potentially look up and be like, holy, why? How are the Wizards like the 6th seed right now? How are they the 4th, 5th, 6th seed? You know, why are they in this playoff mix? I could definitely see that happening this year. I really do believe in the upside of this roster, and I think that they're going to surprise some people this year. So yeah, that's about all I have on the Washington Wizards. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Wizards, their potential this season, how good do you think they're going to be, how do you grade their offseason moves. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in the comments below. But with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.